Chapter 6: The Mongolian Taiga. This time we have arrived to a large extension of coniferous forests that cover most of the north of Asia, from northern Pakistan and Mongolia to the Bering Archipelago in the north of the Pacific. This forest covers a lot of what used to be tundra during the Anthropocene. This is thanks to a slight increase in global temperature and the creation of many lakes and what used to be glaciers. Here in Mongolia, the taiga is mostly composed by descendants of the Siberian large pines and a shrub-like thorny plant that is closely related to the blackthorn but have adapted to poor soil conditions and cold temperature. Also, the forest floor is covered in several species of fungus that grow in the decomposed wood and parasite living trees. And feeding on them we can find the Binbang, a very small social rodent that has evolved to feed only on a couple species of underground fungus. Is a fairly specialized niche, but in this particular region is a pretty sustainable lifestyle. The Binbang is a relative of the hamster that, unlike many of its modern cousins, has reduced its size since the Anthropocene. Actually, depending on the subspecies, some compete for the title of the smallest mammal currently living in the world, with an average weight of 3 to 4 grams. Just a little bigger than the pygmy shrew and bumblebee bat that shared the earth with humans. They live in large tunnel systems, in family groups consisting of between 10 and 20 individuals, around tree-eating parasitic fungus that grow in the roots of pines and larches. They play a key role in keeping the forest healthy and are one of the most abundant vertebrates of the Mongolian forest, and a food source for many predators including other small mammals and some amphibians. To protect from them, they almost never get out of their burrows, and even block the entrances with thorny branches in order to keep the predators away. However, sometimes they do need to go to the surface, whether it's because they run out of food or because they are looking for a partner while they are traveling. They are vulnerable, and there are many creatures hoping to take advantage of that, like the Graven. The Graven is a smaller relative of the European Black Deaths, around the size of a domestic cat that feeds mostly on small mammals, frogs and other small birds. Here in Mongolia they prey on a wide variety of small creatures, from which Binbangs can make up to 20%. Unlike their cousins, these animals are usually solitary, only occasionally forming monogamous pairs. There is a trend for Gravens living in Mongolia and Siberia to form couples more often than those who live in China, Pakistan and India. This is likely to be related with how hard it is for them to gather food and the amount of arboreal creatures that could try to attack an unguarded nest. During winter they change to a diet based on carrion and have been observed to follow bigger predators in order to feed in the scraps. Some even might attempt to distract larger predators to steal food from right beneath their noses. One of the creatures from which the Gravens usually steal food is the Canik, a large omnivore that can be found in all the cold regions of Asia, from mountainous regions in China to the galid tundra of the Bering Archipelago. This creature has a very dense fur and a thick layer of subcutaneous fat that keep them warm even in the harshest winters, and their generalist omnivore diet make them pretty adaptable to a wide variety of environments. They feed primarily on fish, berries and nuts, occasionally also hunting down large prey, but is not common as these animals are not particularly fast and can only run for short periods of time. They are only mildly effective hunters in areas where either the snow or swampy terrain makes it hard for the prey to run away, or when they can ambush them. Their social behavior depends on food availability. In areas where food is rather scarce they tend to be solitary, while in areas where food is abundant they can form small groups. These groups are almost always composed of siblings of the same litter. There is no notorious sexual dimorphism in this species, however it's easy to tell the males apart because of their smell. Their anal glands produce a very strong musky scent that they use to mark their territory and attract females. They mate during autumn and give birth at the beginning of spring to 2 or 3 cubs. The cubs will spend 6 months under their mother's care and then will be weaned and start living on their own. We follow the animal to a lake and soon we realize it is not the only one trying to catch a fish. These birds are not penguins. The Mongolian Fencion is actually a descendant of the Portuguese dipper. They have adapted to a more aquatic lifestyle and convergently evolved a body plan similar to the one of ox and penguins that makes them great swimmers and divers. There are several species that can be found around the Arctic Circle, and in rivers and lakes of Siberia, Mongolia and China. All of them are experts at catching aquatic creatures. Some are generalist predators, others feed mostly on crustaceans. Others are specialized in eating amphibians and others like this one are fish eaters. Unlike the penguins of the southern hemisphere, there are several species of Fencion that have retained the ability to fly. They are not graceful or efficient at this, but they are good enough to take refuge in a nearby tree whenever a predator tries to catch them. They mate at the end of winter. The males will sing for days on until a female shows interest in them. Once a female approaches them, they will show their wings and strut in front of the female. If she is receptive, they mate a few times a day for a week or two, and both the male and female will make a nest. These birds are generally ground nesting, but some might use a hollow tree for extra protection. The females lay a single egg and both parents take care of the chick until it changes plumage. Another inhabitant of the lake is the giant Mongolian newt. This amphibian is one of the largest currently living on the planet, not nearly to the level of their Paleozoic and Mesozoic counterparts, but relatively large for more contemporary amphibians. They can weigh between 1 and 2 kilograms depending on the location, and are one of the most heavily armored creatures of Mongolia. Not only they have a thick leathery segmented coat on their back, but also 7 large spikes that come out from their ribs and hips. These are made out of bone and covered by a colorful thin layer of skin that communicates to the predator, "Don't try to eat me, you'll regret it." If a predator does attack them, this newt will contract the skin of its spikes, showing a clean, sharp piece of bone that can tear the insides of the mouth and throat of any large predator. This newt spends most of its time underwater, feeding on small invertebrates, but is more than capable to travel several hundred meters on land. They mostly only walk on land either when their habitat dries out or gets too cramped due to overpopulation. They reproduce during summer. The females show a preference for bigger males, and the larvae look just like any regular salamander, and during this stage they are vulnerable to many predators, including adult members of their own species. Among other creatures that also prey on this larva, we can find carps, toads, snakes, talpins, and skunk rats like this one. The skunk rat is a relatively small rodent for modern standards, around the size of a rabbit, and can be found in both deciduous and coniferous forests of Japan, China, and Mongolia. They prefer to live near bodies of water and are pretty skilled at both swimming and climbing. These rodents are generalist omnivores and feed on a wide variety of invertebrates, small amphibians, berries, nuts, and are particularly fond of stealing bird eggs. Sometimes taking the risk in stealing from predatory birds like the Graven. These creatures are diurnal and spend the night in small burrows or hollow trees and come out early in the morning to forage for food. Even though they are mostly solitary, they are not really aggressive or territorial toward each other and have no problem sharing their territory with other members of their species, as long as food is not too scarce. Their name Skunk Rat makes reference not only to their black and white coloration but also their ability to fend off predators by showering them with a spray that emanates from their anal glands. The substance, however, is not just foul-smelling like the one of the Anthropocene skunks, but a highly irritating and harmful chemical cocktail that can cause not only a horrible pain but minor burns and even temporary blindness if it hits the unprotected eyes. We are about to head back to the camp when we notice a small creature moving gracefully high up in the trees. It is a direk, a small descendant of the African rock hyrax from the Anthropocene. These animals were already excellent climbers, but with more flexible joints and a higher metabolic rate, the direk is even better at navigating the treetops of the majority of the forest of Asia. Unlike their almost completely herbivorous ancestors, however, the bulk of their diet is made out of insects, especially wood-eating larvae that they find beneath the tree bark or in fallen dead trees. They complement their diet with seeds and nuts from time to time. These creatures are very social and is common to find them living in groups. They are mostly diurnal but take short naps with relative frequency. Often while part of the group sleeps, others will keep an eye on predators. As many animals of this forest would enjoy making a meal out of the squirrel-sized last relative of the elephant and sea cow, including not only the gravens but also bats of prey. Suddenly the direks start feeling anxious and we realize there is a large creature on the trees, the giant Siren, not a predator by any means but a big, clumsy and slow-moving descendant of the Siberian chipmunk. Even though it is not interested about eating the direks, they are sometimes territorial, and their 5 centimeters long claws can cause quite a lot of damage. The giant siren spends most of its life on the trees, feeding mostly on pine cones and needles, occasionally going down to the forest floor to collect more pine cones and complement its diet with moss and lichens. It's during this time that the siren is the most vulnerable, as it's such a slow creature that even a Canuck could outrun them on land. If that happens, their only chance is to hiss. Try to look bigger by standing on their hind legs, and as a last resource use they sharp claws and incisors to scare off the predator. This rarely ever works with adult Canucks but can fend off a juvenile one. They are not social animals, and tend to occupy large extensions of territory. If one trespasses the territory of the other, it most often ends up in a physical confrontation. Mother will even attack their offspring if they refuse to leave after being weaned, around the 6 months of age.